We'll go ahead and get started. So my name is Welke. I'm an occupational therapist, and I have been an occupational therapist for very many years and worked in about every setting. And way long time ago, I would do FCEs, workabilities, all sorts of different things, but that's been many years ago. And it wasn't until Laura, who we'll talk a little bit here, who's in our therapy business builder program, reached out to me and said that she's going to pivot because she had this great opportunity to work with attorneys. And then a few months passed. Well, almost a year passed actually. And then we had someone reach out to us that wanted us to do FCEs. And that's when Laura introduced us to Kevin and Mike. And that's how we are all here today. So you guys can learn more about FCEs, functional testing, what kind of settings you can utilize it in. I am definitely not an expert in this area, but I want to start with Laura so she can kind of fill you in a little bit about her story and what she does, and then we'll let Mike and Kevin take it over.
Sure. I'm Laura. I'm in Omaha, Nebraska. I've been in Kara's program for a little over a year. Initially, I was just trying to have a typical kind of Med B thing, and I met a mom at one of my kids' baseball games. It was an attorney, and she was like, "Hey, do you do functional capacity evaluations, or could you? Because we really need someone here in town that's kind of neutral that can do this." And I was like, sure, I used to do that a long time ago, but I haven't done it in a long time. So I kind of went on this journey to research different companies to see where I could get certification for it because it sounded like something I really wanted to do. And kind of looked at a bunch of them and came across Metrics and Kevin and decided that they were amazing and loved working with them. And kind of their system is amazing. Their customer service is top notch, especially since they're not here in the States. And I remember calling Kevin once going, "Oh my gosh, I don't know what to do." And he was like right on it and right back to me. And I was sold forever that I am a definite metric supporter. I've been doing more and more. We've kind of talked about this before. I've spoken with the group before. I do more now than just FCEs. I kind of do legal support services. So I've been doing a lot of FCEs, but I've been doing a lot of the other pieces as well. So I'm excited to even start using the FCEs more for just my typical patients and in addition to more of my attorney stuff. So I'm excited to see what Mike and Kevin have to present for us because I'm in it as well. So loving it.
Awesome. Thank you, Laura.
Yeah.
Appreciate you and making this connection. Kevin, you want to go next?
Sure. Well, thank you for inviting me along. My name is Kevin Cairns. I'm the founder of Metrics. I'm a kinesiologist by background. So I did work in practice, so probably similar to you guys. Worked in a practice for a while, wanted to sort of expand the things that I was able to do. Just happened to be in a clinic that had a functional capacity evaluation system. One thing sort of led to another. I ended up becoming a trainer for that company in Canada and then running their operations, and then eventually set out on my own to start Metrics to do our own platform and things like that about 17 years ago now. And that kind of brings us to where we are here. So we offer a software application to collect the data. We offer training to do the certification, and we actually have a set of tools so you can collect the data with the tools as well.
Awesome. Thank you. And Mike.
Yeah, I'm also a kinesiologist. I'm the oldest living kinesiologist in Canada. I've been at this for quite a little while. I've known Kevin for about 25 years. I worked for a fairly large Canadian healthcare company. At one point in time, actually, it was owned by Select Medical. Developed the functional testing that this organization did and worked there for almost 30 years. Got to the point where I guess the organization was doing about 3,000 functionals per year. And then about 6 years ago, the president and CEO of the company had a headache, and the headache turned out to be brain aneurysm, and Chris died. And so I went, wow, we don't have unlimited shelf life. So I started working with a couple of startup companies, started my own consulting company about 2 years ago. working more on the business development side of healthcare. And as I said, I've known and respected Kevin for about 25 years. So we've been working together now. Geez, Kevin, you probably owe me a cake or something. It must be coming close to a year now.
Exactly. Amazing.
Awesome. So you want to just fill us in and provide more information on what FCEs are, how we can utilize them? I know you guys have a whole spiel, and I'll just kind of be quiet and let you take over.
Sure. I mean, Mike and I would love a input from you, Kara, or Laura, or anyone in the chat as well. But we have a little dog and pony show that we've been doing, and so we can go back and forth and sort of talk about the FCE stuff, and I can lob some nice softballs over to Mike about that kind of stuff. So, Mike, Laura gave us a little bit of an opening, but do you want to just tell us a little bit about, when you think of functional testing, like what does that mean to you, Mike?
Yeah, a good point, Kevin. And I think Laura did a great job with it too. We talk about functional capacity evaluations, which are fantastic and kind of independent third-party assessments. But there's a lot of opportunity to do functional testing throughout your practice. And so when I look at functional testing, I'm looking at measuring people's activities of daily living. I'm looking at people's work activities. So I'm measuring pushing and pulling and lifting and bending and twisting and all of those sorts of things in a functional perspective. Can be used very much too just with patients of giving them confidence so they can go back to the normal activities. So it doesn't always have to be something where there's a dispute. We talked about attorneys at the start, but you can actually use them with your existing patients to help with goal setting and getting them to go back with confidence to their activities of normal living.
And Mike, you and I have been sort of thinking about this naming of this field, and we are also lumping job demands analysis inside that functional testing realm. Is that a reasonable thing to say as well?
Yeah, a lot of my background has been working with employers. And so when I'm working with employers, the questions that are always getting asked is, can somebody do that activity? And probably if you're working with attorneys or you're working with insurers, they're going to want to know if somebody is capable of going back to their work. So in order to be able to make that determination, to provide an opinion on that, we need to know what the essential demands or the bona fide occupational requirements of the job are. So physical demands analysis, job demands analysis, functional demands screens. I notice people from all over the country, so I'm sure they're called by all those different terms depending where you are residing.
And Mike, if you wanted to, if we were going to talk about two things tonight, just for simplicity's sake, we could talk about testing the worker and testing the job or measuring the job with and so can you just go over which one is which again? So one is a job demands and one is what we call the other one?
Well, I was just referring it to functional testing, and then there's
Okay.
different applications of that. You get a functional application clinically. You get a functional applications with the functional capacity evaluation. We may even venture, depending on the questions, into testing people before they're even a worker. So doing pre-employment screening or post-offer employment testing, but measuring what the capabilities of the individual are.
Okay, excellent. And what about the time? Like, how much time are we talking about for? Let's talk about measuring the person first. So what kind of time frames are like if I'm thinking about putting this into my practice, what kind of time frames? How long does something like this take to do?
Well, depending what you're testing, but you can be as little as 5 minutes where you're doing a functional test of whatever that functional movement is, and then goal setting with the individual, giving them some therapeutic exercise to do, and then retesting them again. So doing a simple lift, if somebody has to lift from their knuckle to shoulder level, that may be all you need to test. Or if you're measuring their range of movement because they need a certain amount of shoulder movement to do something. So it doesn't need to be these, what we often think of a 1 day or a 2 day functional test, which, have traditionally been, 4 to 8 hours. It does not need to be that. It can be as little as 5 to 10 minutes to get some meaningful information.
But if we were going to follow a standardized FCE protocol that we were going to retail or sell on the market, what kind of time frame is that kind of approach?
Probably between 2 and 4 hours, with 4 hours being less likely than 2 to 3 hours probably is what we see most commonly now.
Okay, good. So, and that's probably the product that we really talk about the most, is that, and that's kind of been where I've been sitting, is in that sort of 2 to 3 hour functional capacity return to work kind of space. More recently, you and I have been talking about other applications of functional testing, but maybe for the simplicity of tonight's audience, we can stay focused on, when we're talking about the person, we're really talking about doing that 2 to 3 hour assessment. Then what about if they get into the job demands analysis? Like what, like how long, and even tell me a little bit about what that would entail.
Yeah, well, I guess when we look at the job demands analysis, we're measuring the job. So good, bad, or ugly, that'll be the demands of the job. So whether you're 5'4" or 6'4", the demands of the job are going to be the same. It's going to be measuring, somebody has to lift from skid level at 4 inches up to 30 inches. That is the demand of the job. It'll depend a little bit on the sophistication of the job, but you're probably on site for 2 to 3 hours gathering that information. Some of that is just waiting because you've got to, measure things maybe off an assembly line or those sorts of things. You can't be completely disruptive, and you got to wait for things to happen. And then you probably, well, you tell me, Kevin, with your software, is it 30 minutes for a report to get finished, or?
Oh. Typically, we're trying to do both the FCE and the JDA in real time. So when I say real time, so if we're doing the job demands analysis, it's a little more cumbersome to be taking a laptop out on site. So we have some people that do the iPad thing, but still that's typically more paper and pencil kind of thing. But I think I was trying to draw a parallel, and I think you did a really good job of that. Is there approximately similar lengths? If you're just new to this, it's a relatively easy thing to think about. Is the one is that we would do on site at the workplace, and that's sort of a 2 to 3 hour job, and then the other we would be in our clinic. Or where else could we do that assessment? We don't necessarily have to do that functional. Like if we're doing a 2 to 3 hour assessment, could we do that other places than inside of a clinic, Mike?
Yeah, you could do it in the workplace. You could do it in with proper supervision. You could do it in a hotel. I've done them in libraries in small towns. I've gone to lots of different places to do them. Provided you've got equipment that's portable and reasonably easy to move. It doesn't have to be in your clinic.
Okay. So if we were thinking about the FCE side of things, like how much space does somebody need to be able to perform one of those?
Depending how your clinic is set up, you could do a lot of the testing in a treatment room. You may need to go into a hallway if you have to measure walking capacity, or somebody has to carry something a certain distance, you may need to go into an area. But typically you can put it into the corner of a gym area if you have that in your clinic, or an 8x10, 10x10 space, something along those lines. The newer ways of setting this up now too, you can have portable lifting shelves which allow you to do the testing and then move that away, so you can use that space, so it's not taking up a permanent footprint if you're confined for space. When I started in this business a long time ago, clinics tended to be 5, 6, 7, 8, 10,000 square feet. Now I'm finding clinics are much smaller than that in spaces, so every little bit counts.
Right. And so we don't really need, we don't need to invest a lot in equipment. We don't need a lot of space to be able to perform these. I think I was just sort of scanning through the chat here. I saw a couple people with the word mobile in their name. And so that always excites me, because you and I have worked on a lot of the northern parts of this country and sort of taking stuff around. So this is realistic. So I used to drive an Austin Mini, and I used to put everything I needed inside that Austin Mini to do all my demos. But I mean, that's what we could do. So we're not talking about a huge amount of equipment to do those kind of things. So why don't we talk about? We talked a little bit about the lawyers and a little bit about the employers, but who else would be asking us to do a functional capacity evaluation, Mike?
So we've talked about lawyers, we've talked about employers, workers' compensation boards, insurance companies.
And are they all asking you the same questions, Mike?
Yeah, that's a good point, Kevin. It's a functional evaluation. The written report is really only as good as the questions that you get asked, so that you can answer those. So I think that's important, is understanding the referral source and what their questions are. They should be preparing a series of questions for you that they want answered. Now, it doesn't change. If somebody can lift 40 pounds and somebody says, I really need you to say that they lift 60 pounds so I can terminate their benefits, that's not what it's about. But they want to know what that person's max lift capacity is. Then we can tell them. If they want to know about durability, big word that you and I talk a lot about, is what's the likelihood of somebody going back to work and staying back at work. Then that would be a different question that I would be using that objective evidence to state my professional opinion.
Okay, so the questions in an FCE that we would be needing to answer would be, is the person able to do their job demands? Is that what you're getting at?
It'll be typically around job demands. Attorneys may ask about success, like just because they can do it once, can they do it day in and day out? Union members may, if you have union folks that are involved with the return to work, they may want to know those same type of questions. But yeah, can they do their activities, and what's their ability to do those activities on a reliable day-to-day basis?
Okay. And like when we're measuring, we're measuring the person, are there any standards or categories that help us understand, like, when a person can lift 15 pounds or 75 pounds, or, where do we kind of get direction for that?
Well, there's different accepted protocols out there for measuring, say, something like lift capacity, and there's 2 or 3 of them that are or more. I guess there's not a ton of them, but you want to be using a reputable protocol that's going to ensure that you've got a reliable measure of that, especially if you're getting into talking about durability. So the fact that
Okay.
somebody could do it once, we also want to make sure we follow a protocol that ensures safety.
And we would like to, or the language that I teach in the functional capacity evaluation would really be based around the Dictionary of Occupational Titles and their physical demands characteristics. So
Okay, yeah, I didn't know how deep we wanted to go, Kevin, today. Yeah,
I think just in the sense that because we often hear the term light duties, I think I like to at least bring out that light is clearly different than heavy, but it actually has very specific numerical characteristics to it. That's the language that we start to have to speak to, because the employers are using that same language for their job demands analysis.
they're using that same demands. And again, you may get asked a question if, typically the hierarchy for going back to work is that individual going back to their same job and their same employer. If that isn't possible because of job availability, or somebody's reached maximum medical recovery, it would be the same employer, different job. So now what are they able to do? That's not available. Then you're typically going same job, different employer, and working through that. So you may find where you're looking at a job search and doing something more from a vocational perspective. And now here's what the person's abilities are, using the physical demands characteristics chart, and then looking at the Dictionary of Occupational Titles or ONET or whatever you're using to determine other jobs that's within that. Well, we're getting a little complicated now, but based on their physical abilities and other aptitudes that they're capable of performing.
Let's talk a little bit about sort of the practical application. If I'm a PT or an OT in my clinic, do I exclusively have to be the person doing all the testing, or can I have like an assistant help me out, or how does that piece work?
Yeah, yeah. In most states, you're going to be able to have somebody else collect that data. And as long as a regulated healthcare professional is the one that's evaluating that, analyzing that information and signing off on the written report, then you can have other people. And you may
Okay.
have a payer preference there, but it is certainly um, common for like a PTA or an OTA to collect that data. Exercise physiologists, some of those individuals.
And when we're thinking about a referral, Mike, like when we get a referral, like who's sending us all of the medical information about that person?
Well, usually if it's an employer, they typically don't have much. That's one of the reasons they're sending them to
Okay.
you. But yeah, there'll be secure platforms for sending that information from a lawyer or from again from the referral source, whoever's asking for that, the insurance company, case manager.
Okay. So the medical records will come to you typically from whoever is providing the referral. And then, I mean, this is a little bit quote unquote out of your pay grade, but if we're talking about getting paid, who's paying us, and how are we billing for this service? And I might get Kara or Laura to jump in.
Yeah, I may get other people to jump in. I used to charge by the inch. So if I had to
Okay.
look at the at the medical information that was coming, typically with insurance cases or legal cases, you might get a banker's box full of, equivalent material, right? So that much. So, by the page typically.
But no,
So
sorry, where I was going was with so with the billing model, you can bill under a CPT code for these kind of services. And Laura, did you want to jump in with how you're billing? Like, so different payers are going to be different billing systems, but I'm assuming, Laura, that for the lawyer, they're paying you directly. Is that how that's
Yep,
working?
the lawyers, I have a rate that I charge to the attorneys, and a lot of times they'll even pay me before I've actually done the assessment. They know what I charge and they just send me the check and I get it and take care of it. I'm trying to incorporate stuff more into my actual practice now. I've started kind of promoting that it can be used for all kinds of things now. So in my marketing, that's what I'm kind of pushing towards. And so I would just essentially be charging CPT codes for therapeutic activities and testing to get that covered. I saw in Kelly had a question in the chat about who you get the medical records from. For me, I get them from the attorney or from the doctor. And it varies so much what you get, right? Because you can get a little bit, they'll have it all in a summary. Or I had somebody that sent me one that had 300 pages the other day, which was
yeah.
crazy and overwhelming and took forever to kind of go through. So that's usually where you come from. But with the community-based people, I'm getting either records from them or I'm getting it from their doctor. Kind of looks at.
Yeah, and so the CPT code billing codes, typically the most common one we see is the 97750 billing code that you would use for that particular piece. And yeah, I think I also saw, when you already answers I got for the sports side. So Mike and I were talking a little bit about this as well. So you could use these functional tests for return to play. It doesn't always have to necessarily be for return to work.
Yeah.
Kind of points that way.
And just before we leave this, Laura brought up something really, really important that I was going to mention. So thanks for mentioning, Laura. If you're working with lawyers, I would strongly recommend getting paid up front before you do the work.
It's awesome.
Well, it's
That's my
awesome,
favorite
but
part, right? I don't have to worry
it's
about insurance paying me. I just get the check from the attorneys.
exactly. But they have a way sometimes of forgetting to pay you if it's especially if it's something that happens. Perhaps the case settles 2 or 3 years after you've done your work. So
Well, and I think it also depends too on the law firm that you're working with. So sometimes it's contingent on how they pay you is contingent on the case too. So some of them have a slush fund that they're pulling out of, and some of them you have to wait until there's a verdict. A lot of times, so it's kind of important to, if you're working with the attorneys, to figure out where their model is, so that they have a slush. I like the ones that have the slush fund that will pay me first.
And
Absolutely.
I'm enjoying, Mike, we're getting lots of stuff in the chat and they're all really good questions. So someone's just asking if they just want lift capacity, are we doing a full eval? Are we charging for just the lift capacity? There's not quite enough information here, but I'll let you try it first. I've got an idea of how I might answer that. But
Well, you go first then, if you've got an
okay,
idea.
all right. I like throwing stuff at you, Mike. So depending on who, Sharon is asking this question, so depending on who is asking for this particular referral, I tend to shy away from the mini evaluations. You end up spending a lot of time trying to people then ask for just a shoulder and just an elbow and just that. And realistically, you do need to test the entire body depending on, or you need to test the entire person so you can answer the actual questions. And so it's better typically to have a flat rate that you charge for the functional capacity evaluation as opposed to doing, sort of split pieces. What the short stuff that Mike and I were talking about at the very beginning would really be something that we would be doing as part of our therapeutic exercise program, as opposed to a standalone independent FCE that Laura is doing. So the service that is our primary focus is what we call the functional capacity evaluation, and that's going to be that 2 to 3 hour assessment. And I would want to have a flat fee for that. If you're doing it just as part of your a part of your exercise program, then you can do just short kind of things.
I saw a question from Jennifer that we missed, and it was, is it ideal for a hybrid clinic space? And I will just say that when I was talking to the attorneys, when I set mine up, they were very clear that there's a couple of the people in town that do it, and they were concerned about the non kind of bias that they were showing. There was bias because they were in a clinic with where some of the work comp patients were already being treated. So they were very clear that I needed my own space that was very neutral. But so when I started looking for spaces, I was looking at a couple of the gyms here in town that had little rooms in the back that I could rent as I needed them. And a couple other places like some of the massage therapy places or some of the other clinics that didn't have traditional work comp patients coming in is what I was looking at, just renting a room as I needed it. And I just got lucky and found a little tiny office that's all mine. The care has actually been there. It's not very big. It's pretty tiny. It takes a few steps to get across, but you have a hallway and a couple things like that. So there's ways that you can do it even if you're mobile and just rent a room for the day or rent an office for the day to do these things too, even if you're primarily mobile. So
That's
Kara,
really good points. How I ended up in libraries, Laura. Libraries.
I looked at that too. I looked at the libraries and the community center. I looked at a couple different things. And there are a lot of options if you kind of look.
So Kara, you started to answer a question for Nina about doing like a market research. Do you have any more sort of tips on how to kind of get an idea of what kind of assessment or what kind of need there is in a particular area?
Well, we talk about with our therapist, obviously like Laura, attorneys were her big target area that she started out with. For myself, our workforce safety is who actually reached out to us to complete this, but also reaching out to local businesses as well and educate them how it can help them with their business. But you guys are the experts with all of the other areas. Again, before I talked with you guys for the first time, I didn't even think about adding this to your own practice with the clients you already see in order to do that functional testing pre and throughout to see where they're at.
I would also say too that, I'm sorry, Kevin.
Yeah, no, go ahead, Laura. Yeah.
There's a lot. So I'm in Nebraska, and so there's a lot of industrial here. So there's a lot of, plants and manufacturing things around here too. So I've kind of been hitting those as well now too, to kind of help them with their return to work or even their new hires for those people that are doing repetitive things or working on the line all the time. So that was a whole nother area to kind of branch into in addition to the attorneys and some of the other things.
And Laura, can maybe, because that's what Mike and I were going to talk about, how has your experience been with reaching out to those people?
It's good. Sometimes it's hard to find the right person to kind of talk to get in the door. But I've been able to talk to some of the HR people in the different companies. Like there's a Frito-Lay here, and there's a lot of cow processing and chicken processing plants here where there's a lot of, injuries and return to work things. So I'm trying to talk with one in particular right now to get their contract to help with all their new hires. So
Okay.
that the HR, if you direct towards HR, usually you can get in and find out what they're doing or what they need to do.
And maybe, Mike, this would be a good time for you, like, to tell your story of how you got started.
Yeah, I get started by just talking to my patients and asking them where they worked and what they did. And invariably they'd say, you don't understand, there's a big blue machine and it is brutal and you don't understand what I have to do when I go to work. So I would just call up the supervisor typically and ask if I could come in for a visit, just for a tour of the facility to see what the big blue machine was or whatever it may be. Wasn't even trying to sell anything at that point in time. I was, under the guise of, and I mean truthfully, but I wanted to provide a better program for that injured worker to help them get back to work faster. And in doing so, just taking what Laura talked about, and then you start asking questions and seeing and you find out they have a lot of need, and the supervisor say, well, I can't answer that, but here, I'll introduce you to HR, and off you go talking to whoever you need to speak to.
And Mike, we have another chat question, which I think is sort of really good for you. So the question here about new hires, do you want to talk about, can you just give us a really brief overview of the pre-employment, just tell us what a pre-employment is and tell us how a pre-employment test is different than a return to work assessment.
Well, in a lot of cases, they're not a lot different from what you have to test.
Right.
But you've gone out and done the job demands analysis or the functional job description. You know what the essential demands are, and you do. I hate the word mini because it sounds like you're leaving something out, but a mini or an abbreviated FCE that measures what those essential demands would be. And then probably the challenge with that is you need to respond fairly quickly. People never have enough time. Like they want to get people on the floor tomorrow. So you're typically trying to
those assessments are typically quite short, 30 minutes in length.
30 to 60 minutes. So half the length of what we've been talking about. Yeah.
And I would argue possibly even a quarter, because some of that's just sort of intake stuff. But the beautiful thing about those is the report is literally one page that says fit or not fit, because we're not allowed to supply the employer with medical records. So that the reporting for those, and so when we're doing those pre-employment tests, we're testing the workers before they go into the plant to see if they're actually capable of performing the duties. And if they're not capable, then they're not hired. We'll kind of leave that gray area out or a little bit, but that's effectively the way that those pre-employment tests work themselves.
Yeah. So meets demand does not meet demand, a fit or not fit. Yeah, that's it. One page, a bunch of check boxes, 30 seconds reporting.
Yeah. Because we've had a few questions, like it looks like kind of directing like who's going to send us these referrals. In your experience, so we're talking about getting referrals from lawyers. We're talking about getting referrals from workers' comp, which would often in the US scenario be through those networks. And then we're talking about doing like employer direct work. Like if you were just starting this, Mike, where might you start?
Well, that's a $1 million question. That's if you're working with a network, they'll tend to grind you down on price a little bit.
Yeah. And that's
if you're
the network
working,
we're talking about, like people like MedRisk and
groups like that, or there'll be referrals. They're always looking for somebody to do functional testing for them. I mean, the good news about it is they send them to you. You're not doing any marketing. You're not doing any of those sorts of things. I always like going directly to self-insured employers or directly working with employers.
And I mean, I know the answer, but why do you like doing that, Mike? Like, what's the advantage of going direct?
Advantage of going direct is I can make more money, and my margins are typically larger on doing that. But then I build a relationship, and I can do a bunch of different things with that. I'd rather have 10 large customers than 100 small customers if I could. So who can I work with and trust me, and we understand each other, and other things that I can do. Somebody talked about chicken squawking, processing plants, yeah.
Yeah, and so
Like
I think
a Tyson Foods or something that, they come in squawking, go out shrink wrapped all in the same day.
where you and I were really gonna be going is that employer market. We think that once we have the employer on board, the relationship we can develop over years, it's complicated enough that they're unlikely to move and switch providers because we're doing so many things. And maybe you could just kind of start listing off on your fingers, what are all the like other revenue streams that start to appear once we start to work with employers?
There's education, so injury prevention education we can do. There's creating a job library, so physical demands analysis or functional job descriptions that can be done before somebody injured, so that we can look at stay at work programs. There's a good question we can get to in a second, undervaluing time. The pre-employment screens we talked about, the functional testing, ergonomic assessments. I think we have a few occupational therapists on this call, so even starting to work with mental health programs and those sorts of things.
Okay, so what, like, I think yes, we can do it. So some of these network groups, and there's nothing wrong with that kind of work at all. But what we're trying to promote is that employer service side of the functional testing kind of thing. So rates for these evaluations is an excellent question. We can help you find, so the problem with FCEs is the FCEs aren't standardized across the country or even across North America. So you'll see, even for something that we call FCE that Mike and I have been talking about, we've been sort of specifying this 2 to 3 hour thing. Depending on the jurisdiction you're in, it may be a little bit longer. And so we'll see a price range change. I've seen it as low as like $250 for these kind of assessments, upwards of $2,000. So it's quite a range for the service. So depending on what state you're in, we can help you find some prices on the sort of flat rate fees that you could be charging. And then some of them will cap you with a number of hours if you're doing the workers' comp side of things, with the number of CPT units that you can actually bill for those. Oh, and so Laura said, yeah, so they're just started doing a little, do you like, Mike, in your coaching, in your business coaching, do you talk about price and undervaluing time and stuff like that?
Yeah, I do. One of the reasons I like working with employers is their perceived value. I don't get into many discussions as much about price, because they're not trying to grind me down on that one individual assessment. If I can do an assessment and that person goes back to work and they successfully stay at work and it's a durable return to work, that's worth a lot more to them than the cost of my service. So I find I don't get to that. The other thing, when I start working with an employer and doing a bunch of different things for them, I sometimes get away from hourly rates and start charging day rates. And people don't seem to be nearly as concerned of, they're used to paying day rates for consulting. They don't seem to be as concerned about that rate as they would be for an hourly
So
rate.
if we wanted to help some of these people, just kind of thinking about employers in their area, like, what are, should I be looking at like only employers that hire 10,000 people? Like, what size of an employer, Mike, should they be looking for in their local area?
Well, if you're just starting out, my suggestion is look for some smaller employers that are able to make that decision. So 25, as small as, you get much smaller than 25, you can't do much, but 50 to 100 is a good number to look at. You did some research, Kevin. We had a conversation a month or so ago. I think it was Houston that you looked at, and how many was it 25,000 businesses or something? And
Yeah, the numbers are large for sure. out there, but I think for this group, because they were already there, they can look at specifically in the area. And I think your advice is good. So that sort of target range. And if they did find that employer, Laura already mentioned HR. Is there anyone else that you would think that they would reach out to?
Uh, Typically supervisor, they're going to probably end up having to talk depending on the business. Not that this would be a referral source, but they're going to have a conversation with unions probably at some point in time and make sure the union's satisfied that it's a transparent process and everybody's safe and they're not trying to do anything to either deny a member a job or take them away from that plum job they've worked 10 or 15 years to get. You may end up talking to some finance people at some point in time, so they're going to wonder about return on investment. So we can have some conversations about that at a later time as well.
Okay, so those are some of the things that we were going to explore in the course itself. So Kara, did you want to talk a little bit more about the 12-week program that we're going to do, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I have a few other questions. Or first and foremost, Laura, could you, as an occupational therapist with your own mobile practice, could you walk through maybe like a client scenario and how the whole process works, so those that have similar practices like you kind of get an idea?
Sure. So I initially, my kind of focus has been attorneys, just because that was the easiest kind of way to start, because that's how I found out about all of this. And so I specifically put together a list of all the ones that were doing work comp and personal injury here in our town, and kind of went just to their offices and dropped off information and marketed, and then kind of went that way about it. So now when I get a call, it's usually one of the paralegals that will call me and let me know that they have somebody. And so they kind of give me a thumbnail sketch of what I'm looking at and what their timeline is. And they'll send over a link, usually with all of the medical records for me to look at. And we usually try to get something set up within that week. I did have one that was scheduled for yesterday, but that person went back in the hospital. So usually the turnaround is pretty quick for me when they call me. It's not like it's extended out. So I'll send them a little bit of information ahead of time just to what to expect from the FCE. Sometimes different attorneys will let me communicate with them initially myself. Sometimes they want me to send them the stuff and then they will send it so that I don't see them at all till the day they walk into the office for the first time. And then, you know, from the moment they get there, you're assessing things. So I know exactly how long it takes to get into my building from the parking lot and how many steps it takes and how much pressure it takes to open the door. So I'm all of those things, and you're paying attention to, you know, what shoes they have on and could they tie their shoes and did they hang up their bag on the door and on the back of my door and how much that kind of looked like. So you're looking at things from start to finish, and then you're kind of walking through. You know, you have paperwork for them to fill out so that you can see how long they can sit before they need a break. And then you start giving them testing to do, and you start actually doing the testing. So you're testing their grip strength and you're testing their, you know, picking things up and all of those things. And then once they're done, and you fill out most of the stuff during the assessment. But I'm super type A, you know, retentive. So once I'm back, I go back. Once they've left, I go back and like redo every little thing and make sure that it's exactly the way I want it to do. And then after I've kind of written up my report, the next morning I'll call them again just to kind of see how they're feeling, see if they have any pain or anything that maybe came up from the assessment itself, because usually when they see me, they're doing more activity than maybe they've done in a while, and it's more sustained activity than they were doing with their therapy. So that way I can add that into my assessment. And part of the thing that's been really helpful for me and has really gotten me in the door is that I guarantee a 48-hour turnaround for all of my tests for my attorneys. So they love me. And I always say 48 hours, but I'm pretty quick. And so it's usually more like 24 hours. So they really like me. And then they'll send me more work. But it's a pretty smooth process. Like I use the paperwork, I use the system from Metrics, and I like it. It was the best. I found it to be the easiest to use out of all the ones that I kind of demoed when I looked at it. And you basically get everything done. I go back and overanalyze everything, I'm sure, more than I probably need to. But it's a pretty quick and easy process, honestly. And the system that they have does a lot, like 90% of the work for me. It does the math for me, which was huge because I'm not a math person. So yeah.
We got two questions in the chat here. How
Yep.
long are your assessments?
I usually pull the full 4 hours. I always book the 4 hours. Sometimes it doesn't take that long, but I've done a lot of backs. I feel like I've had a lot of back stuff with people. And those tend to take more. We take a little more rest breaks sometimes with those. But usually I always book the 4 hours. And
And we
then
got
yep, the office thing from Olga.
Yeah.
I do have a little office. It's kind of in the center of town. Um, but you know, you my opinion is that you need to have some place like I would never ever do this in somebody's house because it's not a controlled environment that I control, right? So whether it's borrowing somebody else's office that I know in town for the day, the chiropractor or anything like that, that's your option because you really don't want to be 100%. You don't want to take this into somebody's house because it's not a controlled environment and it can lean towards bias and you don't want bias, especially with the attorney piece of it. But if you're trying to put it into your practice and use components of it, then that would likely be okay, but it wouldn't be a true neutral FCE in my opinion. I don't know if I'm overspeaking that, but
And then Laura, with, we were talking, figuring out your time with the person and then the report that,
mhm.
because people are asking about pay. I mean, it's usually $200+ an hour is what it comes through with what you have negotiated for your cash pay, right?
Yeah. For my cash pay people, that's about what it works. My attorneys is more, right? Because it's the documentation looks a little different for me. I'm a little different in my documenting for that versus for a personal thing. But my rates are high. Like I charge a lot because it's time consuming, right? So I don't, and I'm not, I don't. I could never do more than two in a day of them. It's just it's too much. But yeah.
And then how did you learn how to do it? And how did you know what type of equipment to utilize?
Kevin's Kevin's training. Honestly, I went through his training, which is what like 30, it's for about 30 hours, right? Of training. With the online
Yeah.
stuff and you do kind of a mock one. So you fill it out and you send it in and he looks at it and sends it back to you, kind of keep finishing it. And then they have a kit, which is what I bought. I bought the FC in a box, and then they've got a list of other things that you can get to kind of help, like the telescoping ladder and some things like that. So I have my little kit, and I've added a few things to it from the dollar store, some little bin things and some extra nuts and bolts, depending on what the job is that I'm seeing them for. But yeah.
Awesome.
One thing that I just came to my mind too, that Laura kind of mentioned too, if people are independent and they're mobile, there may be existing clinics in your area too that would contract you to do functionals as well.
Mhm.
Because if you have a clinic and you've got a number of staff and you're trying to do functionals, they can be disruptive to clinical care because you bring somebody
Mhm.
in and you're spending 2 to 3 to 4 hours. So that's another way to get started if it doesn't, compete with the business that you have, is being a contractor for somebody else. They'll pay you more for doing that too because
Yeah.
they don't have a trailing obligation to keep an employee busy then.
And that's a really good point. There's a chiropractor business here in town that does all of the like dot testing. So they actually do like the urine tests and all of those, and they don't have anybody that does the FCEs, and they want to bring that in to their clinic. And so I had a meeting with them last week about coming in and just contracting to do those for them in their facility. So there's an opportunity for that too, especially for a lot of the state testing that they have to do, whoever figure out what kind of a clinic it is. And for us here in Omaha, there's a chiropractor that does it. So Department of Transportation is DOT, sorry.
Mike, another thing I wanted you to address is we had someone comment that she has she's a hand therapist and has a hand therapy clinic. So could you provide an example of just a client that she sees on a daily basis, how you would implement functional testing?
Well, yeah, I guess it could start right from if, that if it's a crush injury or whatever she's doing, she could be using some of the equipment from the FC in a box to measure the range of movement of the fingers and those sorts of things. But regardless, that person's going to have to go back to some sort of meaningful work. So once they're ready, you could have them doing the same type of depending on what recovery they get, they're still going to have to lift and push and pull. So, but starting off, you can use, there's pinch dynamometers and hand grip dynamometers and finger goniometers to measure all of those movements. Is that what she's asking, do you think?
Well, I just like to give other ideas besides like a FCE that, like Laura's talking about. Another example, we have a lot of
Manual
therapists that,
dexterity, Purdue pegboards, and those sorts of things to look at the function of the hand. I'm big on goal setting with individuals too, right? Like, here's what you can do now, and here's what's going to be competitive employment, and let's do these activities, and then remeasure and see where you are in a period of time, in a couple of weeks.
how about for a therapist that has a mobile hybrid practice that's mostly working with older adults? Any way for them to incorporate functional testing within their practice?
And older adults, they're not working at this age?
I mean, I'd say 65 and above, they could be working,
Yeah.
they could be volunteering, they
No.
might not be
Yeah.
working.
Same type of things, finding out what they are doing or need to do or want to do. If it's volunteering, helping them get back to whatever those activities of their volunteering would be, or their activities of daily living.
Awesome. So, I mean, I guess the biggest thing just for all of you that are listening is that there's a few different options. One, if you don't have a practice yet, you could start and build a practice and really focus in on doing FCEs and so forth. But if you already have a current practice, you can utilize the equipment, the resources to start doing functional testing within your own clients, as well as add on other services that can be cash based and so forth. Hopefully that makes sense for everyone. So next I want to go into more about the equipment, the program that we've created to help people get up and going and provide more support in this. Is there any other questions that you guys have? Let's put a yes or no. Does everyone understand at least what an FCE is? Yes or no? And if you don't know, please put no so that we can describe it. Awesome. Awesome. Perfect. Okay, new question. How many people would like to implement this in their practice? Yes, no, maybe, just so we have kind of a rough idea of where everyone's at. Awesome. So we have quite a few people that are interested, some are maybe and so forth. And yeah, and some therapists, again, it really kind of depends on where you're at with your business and how you're doing. You want to avoid shiny object syndrome. It might not be the best time for you guys, depending on where you're at. Ooh, that's another thing I was going to ask Mike. Alicia, they have a clinic where they work a lot with people with concussions, do vision therapy and so forth. Any thoughts or suggestions on implementing this into that type of practice?
Again, I don't think there's anything different. I mean, I'm not going to get into the concussion part of it. When people are able to do activity, you can gradually introduce, whatever functional things they need to do. The one thing that Laura mentioned that I thought was great was the grandkid idea, Laura. I don't know, seeing people's smiles on their faces when they can lift their children. So I think the same thing is, what do they need to do? And then we can measure that function. Need to take care of the concussion aspect of it first, and the person's able to sustain the activity required to do a lift or a push or a pull, or if it's activities. And I keep thinking of it, I keep saying activities of daily living, but Laura's absolutely right. Like, what's going to be the passion for that individual? Lifting up their child or their grandchild, groceries.
Really, it's
Awesome.
just, it's all functional, right? So whatever, we're OTs, right? Everything is function. So you're measuring all of that, lifting, bending, all of the things that you need to do an ADL. So there's ways to incorporate this in your practice. You just have to, we're creative. We think outside of the box, and this is outside of the box. So.
And that creativity, and then once you can figure out what to measure, then it becomes motivating for your patient. They've got where they are now, and where they could get to.
And it's a very clear result. It's like you test the first time and this is A is the result, and then you test again, it's B. So there's ways that you could use this in your practice that are not legal support for sure. And I know that I'm super excited as I'm trying to incorporate this more with my patients, especially with my bariatric population, right? So I have really large patients that can weigh 600 pounds. And so I'm, when I measure what they're measuring, it's very tiny. What they can lift or how they can move or how they can bend is very itty bitty in the beginning. So this is a great way for me to kind of track that. So it's a tangible thing for them to actually see the difference and not just kind of anecdotal, like, oh, I think I'm getting better. I feel a little better. I look a little different, but it's, you could lift this much weight at this point, and you could lift this much, and you could bend this far. So there's lots of ways to do it. You just have to kind of figure out what your clients look like and how you can actually give them these numbers. So.
And then I'm sure you've used this in other parts of your practices, but is using a structure of the SMART goal setting. So there's a specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and or attainable and trackable. And so if you start to use that that acronym and apply that, then it's really your creativity. And that's the nice thing about Kevin's. I guess Kevin's showing some stuff, or somebody's showing some stuff now of the different tools. So you can measure almost anything from the force of throwing a baseball to gas pumps to whatever it may be.
Alicia has a question. So the FCE includes the actual activity or just an objective measure of that activity?
Just the
Looking typi-
objective
oh, go
measure
ahead.
of that activity. So you'd be breaking down you'd be breaking down the activity into its component parts. And so if we were looking at moving dirt from one place to another, if you were a gardener or a landscaper, we would then be doing like a push-pull test for the wheelbarrow. We would be doing a lift test for the shoveling. We'd be doing a walk test for the walking portion.
And depending on the FCs, I've done them too, where you would have a work simulation component at the end after the person's demonstrated abilities. I used to work with one of railroad, and the knuckle that joins two trains together weighs 90 pounds. I had a knuckle in my clinic, but people just didn't come in and try to pick up the knuckle. They had to be able to lift 100 pounds using a protocol before they got to try the knuckle.
Kind of like when we were in OT school and they'd give us in our phys disc class, they'd give us an activity and we'd have to break it down bit by bit by bit by bit. That's essentially what this is doing. It's task analysis, activity analysis.
Awesome. So we put together a program. So when Laura signed up, when I signed up, we signed up for an FC in a box set, and we're kind of on our own. And after kind of meeting and listening to other therapists on what to do, Kevin and Mike put together a 3-month program or a 12-week program. So Kevin, do you want to kind of walk through why you put this in, and why, instead of just doing a bunch of training on your own, this can be beneficial to helping therapists?
Sure. I mean, so I also teach at the university, so I know what it's like to try and get people to do things. So online courses are great. I think we've seen a bunch of things here it's 13 hours is the online course portion, not 30. We do other work aside from that, but the actual online content is 13 hours long. But to get people through that, the first month, what we're going to do is we'll have tasks for them to do. So we'll get you through that 13 hours of the online training. When we'll have time to debrief from each one of the sections. So that's what we decided to do for the first first month. And then the second month, I really wanted to get Mike's expertise in here, so that a lot of these questions here have been sort of, where am I getting these referrals? How do I talk to referral sources? What am I going to say to these people? And so that's where Mike's expertise comes into play. So month number 2, we're really going to get you guys actually started in the business building side of things. And then month 3 is sort of going to be the kind of combination. So we're hoping, and during Mike's section, he will have, stuff, he'll say, you'll need to knock on this number of doors and send this many other things out there. So really getting you out there. And then month number 3, it will be a chance for us to workshop some of the stuff that you've actually done. So I'll be able to look at your reports. So with Laura, I was able to look at some of the reports that she did, send her information back. But now we're going to be able to do that within the confines of our confines of our course. And then Mike's going to be able to dive a little bit deeper, because you guys will start to have questions about very specific things that you're running into, and we're already getting that in the chat already, which is fantastic. So Mike will be able to. I'm really hoping that month number 4 is a lot of workshopping. And what I mean by workshopping is you're bringing all the things that we've taught you so far, and we're able to workshop them together so that all of us can learn about the experiences from different people. Laura is going to join us for that. So at the very least, we're going to have lots of really great stuff from Laura about all the cases and things that she's done. But we're really enthusiastic that other people are going to have different things that they're going to bring to the table for that month number 4. Or sorry, month 3.
3.
Yes.
And as far as doing this course again, so this is going to be the kind of the beta test run of the course, to see how it goes, to make sure, there aren't any changes we need to make. But I mean, the ultimate goal is that we'll be able to continue doing it, and Mike and Kevin will be able to continue doing it. And also with this course, can you talk about the equipment and the other things that come with it besides the weekly? And when we say week 1, there's weekly meetings, live meetings to come to.
Yeah, so there'll be weekly live meetings to come to. I don't know if you wanted to scroll, which way are we scrolling down on that page? You'll see the FCE in a box. So the program itself includes the FCE in a box. So the program will include the online certification. It actually includes all the tools inside the FCE in a box. So that's going to include the grip strength, the push-pull, the range of motion piece, the lifting station. So we did have a couple questions about the lifting station, and that's what that ladder that you guys can see there. That's a telescoping ladder with a platform. Already the lifting platform piece is on there. So that's really that will be included as part of the package, and as well. You'll have the FCE certification, which is the inside there, and then you'll also have full access to our software included as part of the price. So any assessments that you do in that time period, there'll be no charge for no additional charge for the software component. So really, you're getting everything. We're really trying to make it an end-to-end solution in this particular case, to steal some words from Mike. But so everything you would need to do FCEs will be contained inside of here, and then we're going to walk you through the process from sort of start to finish, and that's really where we're kind of going with this stuff here. And then there we do if you're looking for more, we do have some of this content already out on video, so you can follow us on YouTube. And so we have a bunch of sort of Mike and I discussing different things about primarily the employer market and FCEs.
Any questions about what we talked about, what's included? Do we want to talk about the dates for when we're starting?
Yeah.
It
I
is
think
the
it's
last Wednesday.
Karis is when you tell us, isn't it?
Yes,
Karen?
it's
That's
the
when we
last
start?
Wednesday. The last Wednesday of April at 7 o'clock is the first day 1 of the 12 weeks.
So that is April the 30th, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and Sharon mentioned she'd love to sign up, but she's concerned we're going to Hawaii for 2 weeks in the beginning of June. So everything will be recorded as well, and we understand that some people will have things going on with that. So definitely we will work around, because we're hitting into the summer months. We just wanted to get this up and going as soon as possible for our beta trial of the program, because we have quite a few people that were interested in getting up and going. So as far as the link for getting started, so we actually, oh my goodness, 2 people are going to Hawaii in June. Wow,
All right,
that's
we're
awesome.
moving. Actually, we're
I guess
going.
we're all going to Hawaii.
We're all
Yeah.
going to Hawaii.
You
We're all
might as
going to
well.
Hawaii.
Please take me with you. So as far as getting sign up, they'll put the link in the check, but for this beta group and for anyone who signs up by, I believe Friday, we're offering a special discount for you guys. Let me put this screen in here. Okay. So everything that the 12 weeks of training, the weekly training, all the equipment, the certification and so forth is $5,000. However, what we have done is reduce the price to $3,500 for anyone who signs up by Friday, and we have a special coupon code. Those of you that are in our Therapy Business Builder program, you guys have an extra discount that you get as well. So those of you that are in the program, you will have that special discount that you get on top of that. So.
Now I'll say, because obviously I'm a small business owner too, and shiny object, and it's a lot of money, right? It's a lot of money. It was super scary to kind of write that out and pay for that, but it didn't take but 2 or 3 FCEs and it was paid for. So you kind of have to think big picture. Yeah, you're kind of spending a lot to do this, but it's a really great way to add to your practice and really help your patients. So it's kind of a lot to kind of at first, but it doesn't take much to kind of get it back. So I'm just saying that because I've done it. I get nothing from this. I'm not getting kickbacks or anything from this program for this. I'm just telling you that it's a lot, but I did it and it doesn't take long to kind of recoup that back. So kind of keep that in the back of your mind.
Yeah, even at the full price of 5,000, you'd pay it off in what, 6, 7 FCEs with like you do with contracting with attorneys. So so yeah, any questions on this that you guys have? Everyone is quiet now.
Everybody's looking for the coupon code.
Oh, yep. I will share the coupon code. Let me make sure that I got the right one.
There would be no limits for a CODA to do an FCE. If you're doing it for attorneys, there wouldn't be any issue with that. I think if you're trying to bill like Medicare, then you would still it would still need to have things signed off by an OT.
Yes, the 3,500 includes the equipment. Good questions. Other questions that you guys have?
You understand the question about the State Practice Act for assistants?
Oh, let me read it here.
Obviously check your practice acts. You don't need a doctor's order, but I get some of mine from a doctor. I've found that a lot of times here where I'm at, the doctor is actually the person that picks who does the FCE. So they'll refer them to me just as often as the attorneys will.
Let's see. Yeah, I mean, with the, because like, in regards to the State Practice Act, you know, they're looking at like with an OTA or a PTA going out and doing are they able to go out and do an evaluation and a complete, FCE on their own without having a supervising OT or PT would be what I'm guessing that you're looking at.
Mm-hmm.
And then Heather is asking about, so disability claims. So yes, we can, we actually have in the software, we actually have a specific disability, like a specific social security's disability assessment. So yes, you will get also, you can get referrals for disability assessments as well.
And can you talk about how the software works after the 3 months and per report and things like that?
Sure. So we have a couple of software options. We have a what we call our essential package, which you just pay $35 per assessment. So just sort of as you need it. Or we have a unlimited FCEs that you can pay, and that works out to $79 a month if you prepay that for the year. So there's sort of two options, pay as you go or the once a year billing for the software.
So if you're doing at least 3 FCEs a month, it'd be more beneficial to do the yearly one, right?
Exactly.
Once you do the third one, you should, subscription makes more sense.
A lot of great questions. The first training is Wednesday. It's the last Wednesday of
30th.
April. Wednesday,
April
April 30th at 7:00 p.m. Central Standard Time. And the goal is, to get the cohort that we're limiting it to 20 people, so that it's a smaller cohort and that helps with networking and collaboration in the group. And then once we get them going, you guys will receive the other information so you can start doing the training, and then the Wednesday meetings will correlate with the training that's assigned. Any other questions that you guys?
I'll put my email in the chat. So if you guys have questions about just what it's like to use it in your practice already, since I'm doing it, you guys feel free to email me and I'll answer what I can.
As far as payment options, we will. I don't know, Kevin, that's more for Kevin, and Heather, since you're in the therapy business builder program, your total payment is, what did I say, 1995 or something like that, so.
Yeah.
So it's already reduced quite a bit for you. After this cohort, when will the next one be? So our goal is to do this cohort, see how it goes, and then regroup and figure out when to start the other one. So hopefully by fall, we'll do another one. Is that what you guys are thinking, Mike and Kevin?
Exactly.
We want to get started at the end of April so that we can have it finished pretty much in and around early July. And then it's hard to do a course through the summer.
As Sharon, you can technically start the online course as soon as you sign up. And go through all it, but Kevin's broke it out nicely to facilitate making it more manageable as you go through.
Yeah, the intention isn't to slow anybody down, but just to help provide some structure to get through the material.
Laura, how long did it take you to get through the material?
I was trying, I had a very specific start date, so I didn't do anything and just did like full days of the videos and doing it. So it didn't take me very long.
7 hours a day of listening to Kevin. Wow.
Pretty much. Like I finished the class and then I did my first FCE the next week. So I had a very specific date with the attorney that kind of got me into this, that she needed me to be ready. to do one. And so,
So Heather, I
Heather?
think in theory, like after month one,
Yeah, I was thinking, because those first 4 weeks is when you're gonna go through the training and, you know, do those first few, those first 4 weeks.
There'll be a chance to, in between those chapters, practice those particular functional tests and ask any questions.
there's no exam, Olga. It's just you're just going to be handing in your FCE report for me to look at.
And Kristen said, so we'll be reviewing the assigned material each week, and yeah, that's pretty much how you have it set up, right, Kevin?
Yep.
I can go back up to these.
Oh, and someone asked about the job demands analysis. Now I feel like I'm on one of those 1990s selling knives. So we'll throw in the job demands analysis course. If anyone wants a job demands analysis course material thrown in.
Hey, do Laura and I get that? No, I'm just teasing.
right?
You can have the job demands analysis course material thrown in there. Absolutely.
Heather's wondering if, when complete, is this a certification that we get?
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, and there's no the big thing is I hate paying for licensing over and over. So once you've got your certificate, we're never going to ask you for more money for your certificate again.
And that's different from a lot of other places. A lot of other places are going to make you continue to do CEUs and pay them every time. So that
Yes,
was another thing that I
exactly.
really liked about Kevin and his program. So
How about if they have multiple staff that want to, like if they have a bigger business and they want to get a couple therapists trained? Any thoughts on that?
Um,
I'm thinking most people on are just gonna do the one for now, but I don't know, a couple people have reached out that we're thinking about getting a couple people trained.
and are you thinking that they would all go through this program, or they would just have one person
Like,
go
for
through the program?
example, if they want, you know, 2 or 3 staff people to be able to do the FCEs, so it's not just one person, how would that process go?
I mean, we would go through that fairly regularly with people. So likely I would think you'd be doing it outside of this 12-week program, and then we could set them up with with just the online training on its own. And then if they have multiple people, then we would also give them a discount for having multiple people signing. Like, so as long as they're signing up people at the same time, then we would be able to give them a discount on the online course as well.
Sounds good. And let's see, Olga was wondering what the certification is called.
It's called functional capacity evaluation certification. So you're certified in functional capacity evaluations. The more letters after your name. Some people do put those things in there. So some people do use the certified FCE after their name. I don't see it a lot, but I do definitely see it.
I see it more when people have just graduated from school.
Yeah.
Trying to differentiate ourselves.
Okay. Well, you all have the link. We'll send out a follow-up with the link, and if you have any additional questions, we'll make sure that Kevin and Mike's email is there for additional questions. And Laura answered Dana's questions. So yeah, any last minute things you guys have?
And if there's questions in between, I think you have Kevin's email and my email now too, so.
Perfect. Okay, thank you, everyone, and hope to see you when we start the course in a few weeks. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Have a good night.